Hey guys, tonight we journey deep into the sand-swept, sweat-soaked world of ancient Egypt where the pyramids shine in the sunlight, the Nile glitters like a god's mirror, and your life is honestly kind of awful. Because behind every postcard-perfect monument lies someone like you. Someone who's awake way too early, already covered in dust, and wondering whether their donkey is still alive. Spoiler, probably not. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from, and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up itchy, not metaphorically, literally itchy. Your reed mattress pokes your ribs through the thin sheet you're lucky to own, and a beetle has made a nest in your hair again. The sun hasn't risen yet, but the day is already sweating. Your hut is small, as in, if you stretch, you can touch every wall without standing small. The walls are made of sun-dried mud bricks, which are impressively good at keeping the heat in when it's hot and letting the cold bite when it's chilly. You step outside barefoot and immediately regret it. The ground is hot already. Or maybe your soles are just permanently tender from the cracked, dry earth. Your job today is the same as it was yesterday, and the same as it will be tomorrow, hauling, digging, sweating, maybe bleeding a bit. You're not a pyramid builder contrary to modern drama. Most of those were already done by your time. No, you're repairing irrigation channels, stacking bricks for a new granary, or ferrying jars of grain between places that never seem close enough. You chew on some stale bread. It's not fresh, it's not soft, but it's edible, if you call gritty with sand edible. Historians still argue whether Egyptians intentionally baked sand into their loaves as a preservative or just couldn't keep it out of the flour. Either way, your teeth are suffering. The Nile gleams in the distance. It's both a lifeline and a nuisance. If it floods too much, you lose your crops. If it doesn't flood enough, you also lose your crops. There's a very narrow sweet spot in between, and the river isn't really into compromise. As you walk to work trudging, really you swat away a mosquito. It's the 5th one this morning. The gods bless Egypt with fertile land, but they also bless you with bugs. Lots of them. They come for the water, stay for your blood, and never, ever respect personal space. Your neighbour, Amunet, passes by with a basket on her head and a toddler hanging from her hip. She gives you a nod that says this is the 10th day in a row I've done this, and I'm too tired to be dramatic about it. You return the nod with equal enthusiasm. At the work site, a man is already yelling. His name is Patek, and his primary skill is volume. He waves a stick more than he uses it, which is lucky for your bruises. You begin hauling bricks from one pile to another. The destination is unclear. Maybe they're just moving bricks for fun, or punishment. You wonder briefly if anyone in the afterlife has to move bricks. Probably not. Unless it's a special ring of duat reserved for the truly unlucky. A kid trips into the Nile later and flails until someone pulls him out. You all pause to cheer, not because he's okay, though that's nice, but because it breaks up the monotony. During lunch, which is just another hunk of bread and some onion, you sit under the shade of a fig tree and try not to think too hard. Someone nearby talks about omens, someone else talks about dreams. You just try to keep chewing without cracking a tooth. This is your morning. This is your life. And the worst part, this isn't even the bad part yet. You watch the river rise, just a hair's breadth at first, like a whisper running through reeds. The Nile, your reluctant landlord, decides every year how much you'll eat, how well your tools will hold up, and whether your sandals will dissolve into muck by mid-month. This season is Akhet flood time. It comes whether you're ready or not. And guess what? You're not. Your father used to say the flood was a blessing from Hapi, god of the Nile's bounty. But your father also used to say figs were the food of royalty, and you watched him eat half a worm once without blinking. So, skepticism. Floods are like distant relatives showing up unannounced, overstaying, and occasionally ruining everything. The idea is simple. The river spills over, dumps nutrient-rich silt on the farmland, and everyone rejoices. In theory. In practice, your house leaks, your stored grain moulds, and all the tools you didn't bother to move float away like lazy ducks. You stand by the edge of the field, watching water bubble up through the footpaths you just stomped down last week. The scent is damp and promising, earth and moss and distant rot. You know that in a month or two, things will bloom, but for now, you've got mould between your toes and half a roof left. The village elder says this year's flood looks healthy. You're not sure what that means. Healthy like, it won't swallow the sheep. Or healthy like, get ready to live in a puddle for 6 weeks. Historians still argue whether the Egyptians had an accurate calendar system for flood prediction, or just trusted the stars and guessed optimistically. Either way, you're guessing too. You wade into the shallows to collect driftwood for repairs. One log tries to bite you. Turns out it's not a log, it's a Nile monitor, and it's very grumpy. You apologize politely, back away, and decide your house doesn't really need a door. The temple scribes are already setting up shop by the riverbank. They'll record the height of the flood using their nilometer, a grand-sounding word for a stone pillar with notches. If it hits the 4th notch, people cheer. If it hits the 6th, they pray. If it hits the 9th, they start building boats really fast. Your friend Meni says his uncle drowned during a flood like this 10 years ago. He adds this fact while munching a date and pointing out how his new sandals are made of papyrus, just in case. You suspect Meni isn't all that worried. What people are worried about is what comes next. When the floodwaters retreat, the fields will be mud-slick and full of who knows what. Frogs, dead fish, religiously significant eels, possibly even a priest who took one step too far during a ritual. You'll be expected to plough that mess, usually barefoot, while dodging snakes. You step back onto what used to be a road, now a soup of silt and chicken feathers. Your toes squish, and a beetle races by on a twig like it's late for an appointment. You can't help but smile, because for all its flaws, its filth, its unpredictability, its never-ending chorus of buzzing insects, the Nile also feeds you. And no matter how many times you curse its floods, you know the dry years are worse, much worse. Still, you'd like your goat back. It wandered off this morning, and something tells you it's floating somewhere in the reeds, looking smug. You trudge through the soggy mess toward the grain store, where a crowd has gathered. They're arguing over how much grain was lost during the rising waters. A scribe is sweating over a broken tally board. Someone tries to suggest using pebbles instead. Someone else throws a pebble at them. You quietly back away. This is not your battle. Instead, you return home, where your hut now smells like wet thatch and old fish. You hang your tunic on the wall, where it immediately sags like a sad ghost. The sun sets red behind the waterlogged palms, and you try not to think about how much work tomorrow will require. You tell yourself the flood is good luck, that the gods are smiling. But as a fresh drip begins to patter down from your ceiling onto your last loaf of bread, you suspect they're also laughing. Bread again, always bread. You tear off a chunk of the morning's loaf with your teeth and chew slowly, carefully, trying not to crack a molar. It's gritty, not in a rustic, handcrafted way, more like someone didn't sift the sand out of the flour kind of way. You swallow it like it's a dare. Every day, your meals are the same bread, beer, onions if you're lucky, maybe a fig if you're really lucky, and your neighbour doesn't catch you raiding their tree. The bread is coarse, made from emmer wheat, and the beer is thick, practically chewable, cloudy with floating bits of grain that remind you more of soup than a drink. Still, this is food, and food is survival. So, you chew. Your stomach churns halfway through the meal. It always does. Something about the yeast or the fermentation or the fact that you've probably ingested more than a few beetle legs over the years. Historians still argue whether the ancient Egyptian diet was healthy by modern standards. On paper, sure grains, legumes, fruit, but they tend to forget the tooth erosion, the chronic foodborne illness, and the near-daily diarrhea. You drain your beer, it's warm, it's sour, it's kind of alive. Still, it's safer than water. You remember once trying to drink straight from a canal. That experiment ended with 3 days in bed, clutching your sides and begging the ibis-headed god Thoth for mercy. Ever since then, beer has been your only trusted beverage. Even your toddler drinks it watered down. Of course. Well, mostly. You glance at your cousin across the courtyard. He's picking a lump of something out of his bread and frowning. Bug, you ask. He sniffs it. Nope. Rock. You both shrug. Not the worst thing you've eaten. In a nearby hut, someone's boiling lentils. The smell drifts through the air like a cruel joke better than anything you're having today. You fantasize briefly about roasted duck, honey-dipped dates, the kind of food reserved for priests and people who never break a sweat. You sigh. Dreaming about meat is almost as good as eating it. Almost. At market last week, someone was selling goat cheese wrapped in leaves. You traded a carved wooden spoon for a sliver. It tasted like heaven, or at least like something that didn't want to kill you immediately. That counts for a lot here. You scratch your arm absently. Flea bites. Again. You know it's not the food causing them. But when everything you eat comes with the side of grain mites and storage mould, it's hard not to wonder. You remember an old trick your grandmother used, tossing hot stones into beer to settle the sediment. It worked once. Then she shattered the pot and blamed the moon. You didn't question it. Someone walks past selling garlic wrapped in reed bundles. You consider following them, not to buy, just to smell it for a while. That's the kind of day you're having. Your mother once said that bread was life, but she also said not to trust cats that stare too long, and one time she married a man who kept bees inside the house. You take all her wisdom with a grain of natron. Dinner isn't far off, and surprise, it's more bread. You try to liven it up by smearing it with a dab of fermented fish paste. It helps. Slightly. If you don't breathe through your nose, you think back to the festival of Opet, where food was shared among the poor. You once got a slice of honey cake. Just one. You still think about it. That tiny, sweet miracle. You tried to savour it. Failed. ate it in 3 bites and cried afterwards. Not from sadness, from hope, because even in this life of sand and stomach aches, moments like that exist. Brief, golden, sticky. But today's not that day, so you dunk your bread in your beer, chew around the rocks, and pray that tomorrow's fig ration isn't mouldy. It probably will be. There is no bathroom, at least, not in the way you'd like. No quiet little room with a reed mat and a door that closes. No. When nature calls, you have 2 choices: the edge of the village near the compost pit, or, if you're feeling adventurous, a private walk into the reeds by the canal. Privacy is theoretical. Hygiene is, well, let's just say it involves sand, wind, and a strong sense of denial. You squat, you shoo a fly, and you hope the breeze doesn't change direction. Cleanliness is sacred in Egypt, they say. That part's true. Ritual purity is vital in religion and daily life. But sacred doesn't mean easy. You wash your hands in the Nile, rinse your face, maybe even dunk your whole body if the weather's right. But the Nile is also everyone's laundry room, bathtub and drinking fountain depending on the hour. Today, a cow is standing in the shallows. It locks eyes with you. Neither of you moves. You back away first. Back at your hut, you reach for your lice comb. It's carved from bone, a gift from your aunt, and it works barely. Every pass through your scalp collects more tiny invaders. It's not your fault. Everyone has lice, even priests, especially priests, under all that perfume. You once tried oiling your scalp with castor oil. It made your hair shine, but also turned your head into a fly resort. Lesson learned. Historians still argue whether the ancient Egyptians were among the cleanest people of the ancient world, or just very good at disguising the smell. You lean toward the second theory. You change your linen kilt for a fresh one, or at least one that's slightly less damp. It's stiff from yesterday's wash, dried in the sun until it could double as a tortilla. Still, it's better than nothing. You shake it out, slap a small scorpion that tries to hitch a ride, and wrap it around your waist with a practiced flick. Someone nearby is lighting incense. The smoke wafts over the rooftops, sweet and peppery. Probably temple-grade kaifian made from a recipe older than your grandmother. You close your eyes and pretend it's masking your body odour. It's not. You look down at your feet, dusty, always dusty. You step into a small basin of Nile water, scrub with sand, and sigh as a frog leaps out, offended. Your cousin, the same one with the rock in his bread, comes by. You still using that clay pot as a chamber pot. You nod. He laughs and throws you a fresh sprig of mint. Put that in it. Makes it smell like you live at a festival. You do. It doesn't help. But now you're classy. Later, you help your mother burn out an old mat infested with fleas. The smoke curls up through the roof thatch. It smells like scorched straw and regret. Night falls, and you brush your teeth with a twig, a toothstick they call it. Yours is from a neem tree. It tastes bitter and earthy, but it works. Supposedly, you've still got 2 molars that twinge when you chew. One is definitely cracked. The other is holding on by divine will alone. You finish by rubbing natron on your armpits. It's salty, astringent, and possibly corrosive. But it's tradition, and hey, even pharaohs probably smelled like sweat underneath all that myrrh. By the end of the day, you feel dusty. Again. Somehow more dusty than before. Like the desert is inside you now. You lie on your mat. You itch. A flea hops past your ear. You sigh and accept your fate. Tomorrow, you'll try bathing again, probably get bitten by a crab, possibly step on a worm, but for one brief moment, you will be wet and cool and dare you dream clean. Until then, you scratch your elbow and hope the Nile dreams kindly of you. You wake up to coughing, not yours, thankfully. It's your neighbours, again, dry, rattling, like someone trying to sneeze out a pyramid. You sit up slowly, bones creaking like an old door, and rub the sleep from your eyes with the back of your wrist. The air is thick and still, like someone forgot to open the sky today. Your throat scratches too. Not a good sign. But you've been through worse, like the time a scorpion crawled into your tunic and you spent 3 days smelling like poultice and panic. You shuffle outside, squinting against the brightness. The dust is already floating lazily in the air, like it's stretching before a long day of torment. You cough once, just to test it. Yup, that sand in your lungs. Again, everyone's always coughing. It's the dry air, the soot from cooking fires, the ever-present mould in your walls, or most likely the literal dust in every bite of food you eat. Historians still argue whether Egyptians suffered more from lung infections or intestinal parasites. You're betting it was both. With a touch of eye inflammation for flair, you pass by the healer's hut. The reed curtain flaps open, and you catch a whiff of something medicinal garlic. Honey, maybe a pinch of dried crocodile dung. Don't laugh. It's been used as a treatment for everything from toothaches to contraceptives. Quirky. Yes, effective debatable. The healer, old and bent like a half-cooked reed, nods at you and waves a bundle of dried herbs. You're still coughing, she croaks. No, you lie. She squints. You will be. You keep walking. At the edge of the village, someone's burning incense for protection. Against what spirit's disease boredom doesn't matter. The scent drifts like a sleepy serpent, sweet and resinous, masking the more familiar aroma of goat sweat and despair. You help your uncle shovel ash out of the communal fire pit. He's wheezing worse than usual. Dust storm's coming, he mutters. You glance at the sky, pale, greyish, suspiciously still. Great. More reasons to cough your lungs out. A small boy runs past, smearing natron paste on a cut. You remember doing the same. Stings like betrayal, but it works better than nothing. Usually. Sometimes it just makes your skin crunchy. Later, you help your sister collect date pits to grind into powder for a cleansing tea. It tastes like sweet mud, and if you're lucky, it only gives you stomach cramps for half the day. You think about the rich, those lucky few living in villas with courtyards and private lavatories. They have access to imported herbs, trained physicians, and the time to actually rest when they're sick. You get half a garlic clove and a firm pat on the back. If you're lucky, someone hums a hymn while you cough. The temple offers prayers for the ill, of course. They'll even offer you a cure, usually involving a painted amulet and a fee you can't afford. You once tried to sneak into the back during a healing ceremony, pretending to limp dramatically. They gave you a fig and told you to trust the gods. You still have the fig stone. It's your lucky charm. You see a dog limping through the alleyway. Mange, fleas, maybe something worse. It sneezes, looks offended, and trots off. You sigh. At least someone's enjoying this plague of dust and dryness. Back at home, your mother's mixing up a poultice of honey and crushed barley to rub on your brother's chest. It draws out the sickness, she says, or invites ants. Your brother adds helpfully, he's not wrong. Last time you tried it, you woke up covered in six-legged guests. They left after a few bites, unimpressed with your flavour profile. You lie down that night, hacking gently into your arm, wondering how lungs are supposed to feel. Yours feel like they've been scrubbed with old papyrus, and just as you drift off, someone coughs outside your window. Of course, you dream of silence. Not the dreamy, peaceful kind where the world fades and your mind floats. No, you dream of actual silence, no coughing, no shouting, no goats bellowing their existential dread at dawn, just stillness. Too bad, because right now, at this ungodly hour, a rooster is screaming directly outside your hut. Again, you sit up, groggy, hair stuck to your forehead, and curse the bird's entire lineage. You'd roast it if you weren't pretty sure it belonged to your neighbour, and also possibly a local deity. You step outside and nearly trip over a child. He's asleep on your doorstep, clutching a doll made from mud and scraps of linen. You nudge him gently with your foot. He rolls over and starts snoring. You leave him. If only you could sleep that deeply. The village is already humming, not loudly, but in that annoying, low-level buzz that never fully disappears. Someone's grinding grain. Someone else is chasing a runaway goose. In the distance, a woman sings a lullaby, entirely unaware that most of the village is trying to wake up, not fall asleep again. You head to the granary. It's your turn to check the storage jars. You lift the lid on the first one beans, half-eaten, not by humans. You fish out a mouse skeleton with a stick. Your stomach turns. The granary steward shrugs. Better than last week. That one had a snake. You pretend you didn't hear that and move on to the wheat bins. Better, mostly clean. You brush aside a few dead beetles and pretend they're raisins. If you don't name them, they don't count. The morning progresses as you help patch up a mud brick wall that collapsed overnight. Wet season problems. The bricks ooze between your fingers like soggy cake. You slap another one into place and try not to inhale too deeply. It smells like mildew and defeat. A merchant wanders past, bragging about his new shipment of cedar wood from Byblos. You've never seen cedar in your life, but he smells fancy, and his sandals aren't cracked. You quietly envy both. Your aunt is preparing a batch of eye paint coal made from ground galena. She offers to line your eyes. Protection from the sun, she says, and evil spirits. You say yes. Now you look fabulous and maybe slightly cursed. Historians still argue whether cosmetics in Egypt were purely aesthetic or primarily medicinal. You believe it's both. When you look this good, even a sandstorm feels personal. A child screams. Another goose incident. You turn away. You walk past the temple and hear chanting, rhythmic, slow. It vibrates in your chest like a second heartbeat. You peek inside. A priest is anointing a statue with oil and speaking to it like an old friend. The statue doesn't respond, but somehow you feel watched anyway. You remember the story of a man who claimed a statue whispered secrets to him. They found him naked in the canal 3 days later, insisting he was married to a hippo goddess. You keep your opinions to yourself. Lunch is more bread. You try to liven it up with honey, but someone beat you to the pot. There's half a fig left. You eat it in one bite and cry a little. The rest of the day drags. You sweep dust. You cough dust. You become dust. Evening brings no silence. A donkey brays. Your neighbour practices his flute. Badly. Somewhere. A child is still screaming about the goose. You lie down and stare at the ceiling. A gecko watches you, probably judging your life choices. You whisper, "Switch places with me." It blinks. You think that means yes. The stars don't twinkle here. They glare. You lie awake under the low ceiling. The rush of night sounds circling you like a gossipy aunt. Dogs bark. Frogs croak. And that one goat, yes, that one still hasn't accepted the concept of bedtime. You turn over on your reed mat, which is doing an impressive job of impersonating a basket of sticks, and you try to breathe without inhaling a spider. Spoiler, you fail. Eventually, you give up on sleep and step outside into the cool desert air. The village is quiet in that ominous way that makes you sure something's about to go wrong. A breeze kicks up, dragging the scent of wet mud, old smoke, and regret. You scratch your knee and wonder how many bites are too many bites. You sit on a low wall, stare at the sky, and try not to think about the funerary procession you saw this morning. Death is constant. Not in a spooky way, more in a yep, there goes another one kind of rhythm. A child dies of fever. A man collapses in the field. Someone gets kicked by a camel and doesn't get up. Life here isn't so much a journey as it is an endurance test with a questionable prize at the end. Historians still argue whether average lifespans were really that short or if child mortality skewed the numbers. But you know one thing, if you live past 30, you get a suspicious look like you've made a deal with a god. You think of your cousin, the one who fell off a fishing boat and vanished. They say Sobek took him. You suspect it was more a matter of he didn't know how to swim and the current doesn't care. Still, you leave a small fish on the bank now and then, just in case the crocodile god is hungry and sentimental. Nearby, a cat slinks by, its eyes flashing like gold coins in the moonlight. Sacred, they say. You believe it. You once saw one leap from a rooftop, land on a snake, and strut away like it owned the world. It probably does. You head back inside and roll yourself up like a burrito in your thin blanket. The mat crackles beneath you. A beetle skitters under your elbow. You sigh and accept its presence. He's called Frank now. Before sleep takes you, you remember the story of the farmer who tricked the tax collector by hiding his grain in clay pots marked pickled frogs. It worked. For a week. Then someone got curious. And sick. You dream of that farmer sometimes. He's dancing barefoot in the wheat field, laughing like a madman. You think he had the right idea. In the distance, the temple gong sounds. Morning prayers will begin soon. You close your eyes. You have 15 minutes to pretend this life is manageable. You savour every second. Hey, remember that bread? The one with the rock in it? Yeah, you're chewing another one. You're sitting cross-legged outside your hut, watching the sun climb its slow, inevitable path over the palm trees, gnawing on something that technically qualifies as food but feels more like punishment. Your molar makes a quiet crack noise. You pretend not to hear it. This is breakfast. Flatbread. Again. With the same coarse grain that's been ground on the same sandstone slab your grandmother used. That's not sentimentality. It's just nobody's replaced it. The grit has worn into the flour so deeply that your dentist, if you had one, would weep. You dip the bread in lentil stew. It helps, but only a little. It's still like biting through a papyrus scroll. You fish out a pebble with your tongue and flick it into the dust. Your sister chuckles. That's the crunchy bit. Best part. You glare. She shrugs. Most of the food in your life tastes like dust, salt, or disappointment, salted fish, lentils, onions. On rare days, a bit of goat meat or dried duck if someone important is celebrating something. Today is not a rare day. Your neighbour waves a date in front of you like it's a golden coin, traded for this. He boasts. 2 reeds and a back rub. You nod, impressed. He bites into it and promptly chokes on the pit. Worth it, he gasps. The local diet is heavily reliant on whatever you can grow along the Nile. Barley for beer, emmer wheat for bread, some leeks, garlic, and a few cucumbers if the soil's forgiving. Fruit only when the gods are smiling. Spices don't even dream of it. You once tried to eat a lotus root. It looked beautiful, delicate, pink, promising. Tasted like wet sadness. Historians still argue whether Egyptians enjoyed a balanced diet or just made do with what wouldn't kill them immediately. Judging by the state of your stomach, you vote the latter. Lunchtime is more stew, maybe with some chickpeas. You bite down. Another rock. Seriously, you pass by the fishmonger later. He offers you a slab of fermented fish paste. Good for your digestion, he claims. You take a sniff. It smells like a cat's dream diary. No thanks, you whisper. There's a merchant shouting about imported beer dark, thick, and allegedly blessed by Hathor. You know better. That beer once gave your cousin vivid hallucinations and a 3-day fever. He claimed he spoke to an ibis and now refuses to eat anything with feathers. You find a half pomegranate someone dropped in the dust. You pick it up, brush it off, and hesitate. Then you eat it. It's slightly fermented, slightly chewy, slightly perfect. Dinner comes with a side of laughter, at least. You sit around the fire, passing around roasted locusts. Your uncle insists it's a delicacy. You pop one in your mouth, crunchy, a little nutty. You kind of like it. You don't tell anyone. You stare into the fire and try to imagine a feast, a real one, with roast goose, honey cakes, figs bursting with juice, cool beer, and fresh river fish steamed in palm leaves. Then your brother tosses a dried onion skin into the flames and ruins the whole mood. You lie down again, stomach fullish, tongue scratched, teeth aching, and somehow still kind of hungry. Tomorrow's bread is already baking. You hear the stone grinder working. You wince. Your molar winces too. You dream of teeth, falling out, one by one, each replaced with a tiny piece of gravel. You wake up mid-chew and realise, tragically, that it's not dream, it's breakfast again. The sun has barely risen, but the village is already awake, a hive of tired feet and louder than necessary voices. You sit up slowly, your spine making a sound like a reed basket unravelling. You stretch, yawn, and immediately sneeze. Dust. Again. Outside, your neighbour is arguing with a goat. Loudly. You have no idea what it did, but judging by the tone, it's personal. Today is laundry day, which means you and your siblings trek down to the river, dragging bundles of clothes that smell like defeat. The Nile glitters under the rising sun, deceptively beautiful. You kneel on the muddy bank and begin scrubbing, which is a generous word for vigorously hitting cloth with wet sand and hope. Laundry here is a full-body workout. Your knuckles get scraped, your back screams, your hands wrinkle like old figs, but at least the fish are friendly. One of them swims too close, and you shriek. Your brother laughs so hard he drops a tunic in the water. It floats away like it's making a dramatic exit. You let it go. While you wash, you hear the priest chanting at the temple nearby. They're performing another cleansing ritual, this one to keep the crocodiles away. Especially from children, someone mutters, eyes darting toward the riverbank. You splash your feet a little faster. You glance at your reflection in the water, sunburned, slightly sunken-eyed, hair tied back with a frayed strip of linen. You smile at yourself. It looks like a grimace. You stop. Historians still argue whether the Nile was more a source of life or death. You believe it's both. It feeds your family and swallows your laundry. Balance. On the way home, you pass the local brickmakers. They're ankle deep in mud, slapping wet clay into moulds and stacking them to dry in the sun. One of them waves and offers you a job, and you point to your hands, red, raw, covered in soap residue. He nods. Fair. You spend the afternoon weaving reeds into baskets. It's mindless, repetitive, strangely comforting. Until a reed slices your finger. You suck on the cut and decide the basket can be slightly ugly. A fly lands on your nose. You try to swat it with a nearby scroll and accidentally rip it. Oops. Hopefully it wasn't sacred. You take a break under the shade of a palm. Someone's playing a flute. Not well, but it's soothing in a chaotic sort of way. You close your eyes and imagine being somewhere else, maybe in a royal garden, sipping pomegranate wine, watching birds that don't try to steal your food. Then a bird steals your food. Figures. Dinner is lentils. Again. You've started naming them. That one is Kevin. That one's Shakira. That one's Crunchy. You sigh. Tomorrow is another laundry day, and another dream of teeth. Your back is not happy with you. You roll over on the reed mat and groan. Every part of your body sounds like a door hinge. You're only 20-something, but your bones are writing their own resignation letter. Outside, the day is already heating up. The kind of heat that clings to your skin like guilt. You step into your sandals, which are stiff from yesterday's sweat, and shuffle into the light. The sun slaps your face. Rude. Today. You're assigned to help with irrigation. The Nile has receded, leaving behind damp earth and a million angry insects. You grab a shovel and head for the dikes, where water is supposed to flow neatly into the fields if the gods feel like cooperating. They don't. The first ditch you try to clear is clogged with reeds, mud, and what appears to be a very confused frog. You try to scoop it out. It hisses. You scream. Dignity is not your strong suit today. You manage to divert a thin stream of water toward the barley field. It trickles like it's questioning its own existence. You fan your face and curse the sun again. One of the older men mutters about building a better canal system. Everyone nods, but nobody moves. The effort alone could cause a nap. You glance at the field. The barley's coming in patchy, not a good sign. A thin harvest means tighter rations, more debt, and more desperate prayers. You cross your fingers and throw a pebble into the water, just in case. Historians still argue whether Egypt's irrigation methods were as advanced as their art suggests. You, standing knee-deep in swamp muck and frog pee, have your doubts. Later, the overseer swings by. He's on a donkey that looks as tired as you feel. He doesn't speak, just points at a collapsed section of dike. You nod and grab your tools. He rides off, probably to yell at someone else. You shovel. You sweat. You invent new curses. A mosquito lands on your neck. You slap it. It explodes. You're unsure whether to feel victorious or disgusted. By midday, the heat is unbearable. You take shelter under a fig tree and share a bottle of beer with another worker. It's warm, flat, and vaguely sour, like your mood. You sip slowly, pretending it's chilled. It isn't, but the buzz helps dull the ache in your shoulders. A travelling entertainer passes by, juggling stones and reciting a poem about a lion who falls in love with a fish. You're not sure whether it's romantic or tragic. Probably both. You chuckle anyway. It's the most excitement you've had all week. Dinner is roasted onions and more flatbread. The bread's slightly less gravelly tonight. Progress. Someone added herbs, or possibly weeds. You eat it anyway. As the sky fades into violet, you wash off in the river. The water's cold, a shock against your sunburn. You exhale. The moon rises. Your muscles ache. But the frog didn't bite you. The canal didn't collapse again, and you only swallowed one bug all day. You call that a win. The moon is too bright tonight. It spills over the village like milk from an overturned jar, bleaching the mud brick walls and setting every shadow on edge. You toss on your mat, eyes wide open, watching patterns dance across the ceiling. Somewhere, a night bird screeches. You try to ignore it. You fail. Eventually you rise. Again, you slip outside and walk quietly, barefoot, over the hard-packed earth. The village sleeps fitfully, some snoring, some murmuring in dreams, some rustling like mice in their huts. You feel like a ghost, or maybe a god, or maybe just a person who's really bad at sleeping. You pass the old woman who keeps bees. She's talking to herself, or to the bees, or both. Her hands move slowly, drawing patterns in the air. You wave. She doesn't see you. Or maybe she does and decides not to wave back. The granary looms large in the moonlight. A rat scurries along its base. You decide not to mention that to anyone. Let it be a mystery. You stop by the edge of the Nile. It looks silver now, shimmering and silent. You sit, knees to your chest, and listen. The river gurgles gently, like it's trying to remember a song. Reeds rustle, frogs chirp. Somewhere, someone coughs. You wonder what it would be like to live upstream, or downstream, or not by the Nile at all. What would it feel like to drink water from a well, or catch rain in your mouth? You've heard of places like that, but they sound like lies invented by poets. Historians still argue whether the Nile's flood patterns were more predictable than chaotic. You argue they were both predictable in their chaos. Like a parent who always yells but never on schedule, you lie back in the grass and stare at the stars. The sky here is huge, terrifyingly so. You feel like it might swallow you. And weirdly, you wouldn't mind. Your brother once said stars were holes in the sky made by the gods to spy on people. You believed him until you saw one shoot across the heavens. No god needs to move that fast. Still, you wave at the stars. You whisper, "Nice try." Back in the village, a baby starts crying, then another and another. It's like a chain reaction of sleeplessness. You smile grimly. Misery, it seems, does love company. You pass by a hut where two teenagers are sneaking honey from a pot. They freeze when they see you. You hold up a finger to your lips. They nod solemnly. You're all complicit now. You crawl back into your hut as the sky begins to pale. Another day is almost here. You roll over and face the wall. Maybe sleep will come now that it's nearly time to wake. The mat creaks. The rooster stretches its neck. You groan. There is no mercy, only mourning. You're not a mourning person, which is a problem, because in ancient Egypt, there's no such thing as sleeping in. The rooster has been yelling since the first hint of dawn, and your family has accepted this as divine instruction to begin banging pots. sweeping the floor and discussing bowel movements at full volume. You sit up slowly, like a mummy halfway through unwrapping. Your hair is a disaster. Your breath could start a war. You blink at the light creeping under the doorframe and pray to literally every deity for 5 more minutes. Denied. You stumble outside and splash your face with water from the communal jar. It's warm and smells like pottery, but it wakes you up. Barely. Breakfast is, you guessed it, flatbread and lentils. You chew carefully, still traumatized from yesterday's gravel surprise. Today's batch only has a faint crunch. You celebrate by not crying. You're headed to the temple district today, not because you're religious, though you are, in the casually terrified way everyone is. No, you've been roped into helping a relative deliver offerings, which means carrying baskets of onions, beer jugs, and incense bundles while dodging sacred cows and sanctimonious priests. The walk is long, dusty, and somehow uphill both ways. At the temple gates, the guards eye your bundle with suspicion, then wave you through. You wonder, as always, what exactly they're guarding against. Robbery, spoiled onions, improper prayers. Inside, the temple is cool and dark, a welcome contrast to the blinding sunlight outside. The floor is polished stone. The walls are covered in colourful mural stories of gods, battles, rituals, and at least one suspiciously well-dressed baboon. You catch a glimpse of the inner sanctum but dare not enter. Only the high priests can go there. You bow, set down your basket, and back away as reverently as someone with a sore ankle can manage. Historians still argue whether temple workers were seen as holy servants or glorified janitors. Watching a priest mop up spilled oil with a look of deep spiritual disappointment, you suspect the answer is both. Outside, the street is bustling. A procession of mourners passes by, wailing dramatically. A child sneezes and gets smacked for waking a lizard. A woman hawks perfume made from myrrh and probably tears. You buy a dab. You immediately regret it. You make your way to the market square. It's chaos, but organised, sort of. Everyone has a spot. Everyone yells. Everyone smells like either garlic or ambition. You trade a bundle of reeds for a half melon and eat it while watching 2 donkeys fight. It's the highlight of your morning. Your cousin catches up with you, waving a scrap of papyrus. It's covered in messy symbols and what might be poetry, or a recipe, or a love letter. He doesn't know. He can't read. Neither can you. But you nod appreciatively and say, "Very moving." He beams. The day wears on. The sun rises higher. You dodge a runaway goose, laugh with a weaver, and get lightly cursed by an old man who claims you stepped on his shadow. You offer him a fig. He forgives you. Evening comes slow but steady. You head home, tired, hungry, and still very much not a morning person. Tonight, you sleep like a rock, not because you're well rested, but because you've hit the precise level of exhaustion where consciousness simply gives up. You drop onto your mat, face first, and vanish into dreams before you can even groan. Unfortunately, you wake up before the sun does. It's cold. Yes, cold. Egypt does that sometimes. The desert doesn't care about your comfort. You wrap your linen shawl tighter and huddle against the wall, trying to trap the last scraps of body heat like they're fleeing mice. You consider going back to sleep. You consider it very seriously. Then you hear your mother shout your name. There goes that plan. You're on water fetching duty today. The household jar is nearly empty, and no one trusts your younger brother not to drop it. Again. You heave the clay vessel onto your shoulder and trudge down to the Nile, grumbling softly. It's heavier than it looks, and if you spill it, you'll be laughed at until the end of the next flood cycle. The river at dawn is eerily still. Mist curls low over the surface. A crocodile eyes you from the opposite bank. You stare back. Mutual agreement, not today. You fill the jar slowly. The water sloshes and smells faintly of fish and silt and secrets. You balance it carefully on your hip and begin the slow walk back. A dog barks at you. A child runs past and nearly knocks you off balance. You hiss like a cobra. At home. Everyone applauds your return like you've brought gold. You roll your eyes and mutter. You're welcome. Pharaohs. Breakfast is, you guessed it, bread. Stale this time. You dunk it in warm beer to soften it. That works. A little. You spend the morning grinding grain. It's loud, dusty, and repetitive. Your hands ache. Your shoulders protest. You have flour in places flour shouldn't go. Historians still argue whether ancient Egyptian women had more rights than their contemporaries elsewhere. But no matter your gender, grinding grain remains the universal chore of sorrow. In the afternoon, you help with weaving. You're not great at it. Your threads always go slightly diagonal. Your aunt says you're cursed by a spider goddess. You laugh. She doesn't. You try again. This time it's straighter, still a little crooked. But who's measuring? There's a festival coming up, one of the dozens that seem to happen for gods you can't keep straight. This one's for Bastet, the cat goddess. You're told to help prepare offerings, which means slaughtering a chicken. You politely decline. Someone else takes the honour. You light incense instead and nearly choke on the smoke. Later, you shape a little clay figure to place at the household shrine. It's supposed to be a cat. It looks like a sad potato. Your cousin laughs. You tell him it's abstract. Evening brings more music. A neighbour plucks a lyre and sings a story about the moon falling in love with a fisherman. It's sweet and strange and probably not entirely true, but nobody cares. The tune's nice. You fall asleep with that melody in your head. The sad potato cat watches from the corner. It seems pleased. The cat is missing. Not your potato figurine. It's still sitting smugly in the shrine, but the actual family cat. The one that's not technically yours, but has adopted your home, your food, and your bed like a small, furry monarch. Everyone is concerned, of course, but your mother is especially distressed. If something happened to her before the festival, she whispers, clutching her amulet, we'll have to purify the whole courtyard. You nod solemnly. You're not sure what purify involves, but it usually includes incense, muttering, and someone crying. So, instead of your usual chores, you're sent out to find the feline. You call softly, clicking your tongue and muttering promises of leftover fish and belly rubs. Nothing. No reply. Not even a disdainful meow from a rooftop. Your first stop is the neighbour's grain shed. Cats like mice. Mice like grain. Logic. You tiptoe through the dusty storage room, past sacks of barley and one very startled pigeon. No cat. You check behind the bakery, where warmth and crumbs lure every stray in town. There's a group of kittens wrestling over a date pit. Still not yours. You ask the baker if he's seen her. He shrugs and offers you a burnt bun. You take it. Obviously. Eventually. You try the temple courtyard. Bastet's shrine is adorned with fresh garlands and offerings, mostly fish, milk, and the occasional shiny pebble. You half expect to find your cat curled up at the goddess's feet, smug as ever. She's not there. But the priestess is. She eyes you knowingly. You lost your cat, she asks, as if she's been waiting for this. You nod. She'll return, the priestess says, when she's finished with a message. You blink. What message she'll know. That clears absolutely nothing up, but you nod like you understand. You leave, slightly spooked. Historians still argue whether domestic cats were seen as divine messengers or merely pampered pest control. You now believe they're both, and also possibly part-time philosophers. As the sun sinks, you head home empty-handed. You brace for your mother's sigh, your brother's teasing, and your own quiet guilt. But there she is, curled up on your mat, grooming her paw like she hasn't spent the day on a spiritual walkabout. She flicks her tail, doesn't even look up. You stare. She yawns. You exhale. Then you laugh, loudly. Your mother gasps in delight. Bastet's favour returns. Your brother mutters, "You're lucky she didn't get eaten." You respond by offering the cat a scrap of salted fish. She sniffs it, then turns away. Apparently it's not the right kind. Later, you light a candle at the shrine and place the fish beside your potato cat figurine. You say a quick, awkward prayer. Not because you believe the real cat is divine, but because if she is, you'd rather be on her good side. You fall asleep to the sound of purring and wind, and possibly divine judgment. Today is bath day. Not for you though, honestly. Yes, also for you, but for the entire household's laundry, jars, mats, and emotional baggage. Bath day means hauling, scrubbing, rinsing, wringing, and airing. It also means no escaping the chore list unless you've suddenly developed a believable limp. You try. Your mother doesn't buy it. So off you go, arms full of linens, to the banks of the Nile where the women of the village are already elbow deep in suds and gossip. Children splash nearby, daring crocodiles with an optimism you find both bold and deeply stupid. You pick a spot near the reeds and slap your tunic against a smooth stone. The way you've seen the elders do it, it makes a satisfying whap, followed by a less satisfying squelch. Your technique needs work. Someone behind you sneezes. A dog howls. The rhythm of washing continues. You tune into the conversation around you. One woman is complaining that her husband snores like a war chariot. Another is claiming her neighbour's beer has been watered down. A third is convinced that the pharaoh has secret goat hooves. You raise your eyebrows at that one. Historians still argue whether everyday Egyptians believed the pharaoh was divine. You murmur aloud as you dunk a particularly filthy shawl. But I'm pretty sure nobody thought he was half goat. The sun climbs higher. Your back starts to ache. A fish jumps. You start imagining what your future smells like. Hopefully less like river mud and more like jasmine. Eventually rend, you wring out the last tunic, arms trembling from the effort. You lay it across a bush to dry and flop into the grass beside it. The breeze finds your skin. You let out a satisfied groan that's halfway between pleasure and exhaustion. Nearby, your cousin is trying to use laundry soap as shampoo. She's either a genius or going blind. Time will tell. As the linens dry, people begin packing up. You gather the crisp, sun-warmed cloth into a bundle and hoist it onto your hip. It smells like wind, water, and effort. You trudge home. You pass the scribe's house, where a boy is learning to write. He scowls at the symbols on his tablet, muttering nonsense syllables. His teacher smacks a reed beside him. You offer a sympathetic glance. He looks at you like you're free and he's in jail. You want to tell him it's the other way around. Back home, Your mother inspects the laundry like a royal examiner. She gives a single nod. Acceptable. You beam like you've been awarded a medal. Dinner is beans, garlic, and something green that nobody identifies. You eat quickly, fighting over the last scoop with your brother. The cat wins. Later, you take a real bath, or as close to one as your courtyard allows. You pour water over yourself from a jug, teeth chattering as it hits your sunburn. You scrub with sand and soap made from animal fat. You smell marginally better afterward. Clean, dry, and wrapped in your least scratchy tunic, you sit under the stars and pick dirt from your fingernails. You feel human again. Tired, but human. You wake to the sound of drums. Not loud ones, the kind that rattle the bones, but soft ones. Distant and steady. Like a heartbeat coming from across the dunes. It takes you a moment to remember today's the wedding. And not just any wedding. A cousin's cousin marrying the daughter of a local grain official, which means there will be music, bread shaped like birds, and at least one awkward relative trying to dance. You're not sure if you're dreading it or excited. You help carry baskets to the celebration site: figs, nuts, sweet beer, and flatbread stamped with protective symbols. Someone's carved a fish into one loaf. Someone else brought honey. You mentally prepare your stomach for warfare. By midday, the festivities begin. The bride arrives wearing a garland of lotus petals and too much eyeliner. She looks beautiful and slightly terrified. The groom is sweating through his tunic. You assume it's nerves, though it could just be the heat. They're singing, of course, tuneless and enthusiastic. Lutes and flutes play melodies you half recognize from other festivals. The old men clap out rhythms that always sound slightly offbeat but somehow work anyway. Historians still argue whether ancient Egyptian weddings were religious ceremonies or simply legal agreements. Watching the priest chant while someone's grandmother throws flower petals at the wrong couple, you figure the answer is yes. The bride's uncle makes a speech that goes on far too long. You pretend to listen while sneaking a piece of pomegranate. The cat appears because of course she does, lounging under a food table like she owns the event. She hisses when a child gets too close. You think she deserves a seat at the head table. The afternoon melts into evening. People dance in the dust, hands raised, hips swaying like reeds in wind. Someone starts a conga line. You get dragged in. You regret nothing. At some point, a story circle forms near the fire. An old storyteller, voiced like gravel and honey, begins weaving tales of gods and crocodiles, of how the ibis learned to read, and why scorpions fear laughter. You lean in, mouth full of sesame cake, and lose yourself in the rhythm of his voice. It's the kind of story that folds around you like a warm cloak. One of those tales where the moon speaks and the desert listens. You don't know how long you sit there, blinking at the flames, eyes half-lidded. Eventually, your mother gathers your family to head home. You say goodbye to cousins you only see on ceremonial occasions: births, deaths, and weddings, in that precise order, and promise to visit soon. You won't. Nobody ever does. You walk back under a velvet sky, arms looped with baskets now emptied of everything but crumbs and flower stems. The drums have faded, but you still hear them, faintly, in your chest. At home, you collapse onto your mat, sandals kicked off in different directions. You don't even undress. The cat curls up next to your leg, purring like she had the best time of all. You think weddings aren't so bad. as long as there's food and no one makes you give a speech. And maybe, just maybe, if you fall asleep quickly enough, you'll dream in rhythm. The morning after the wedding feels like a hangover. Even though you didn't drink enough to earn one, your joints ache from dancing, your feet from walking, and your ears from Uncle Menotep's eternal speech about the virtues of barley. You yawn like a tomb door creaking open, then immediately regret it. Your mouth tastes like sesame dust and regret. Outside, the air is cooler than expected. The breeze carries the scent of tamarisk blossoms and something vaguely burned. You step into the courtyard and discover the sauce your brother trying to cook without supervision. You gently take the bread from the fire before it becomes charcoal, and he pouts like it was a masterpiece. It's market day, so you're sent into town with a shortlist dried fish, flax thread, honey. If it's cheap, it's never cheap. And gossip because your mother insists you keep her updated on which neighbour has grown suspiciously fat or suspiciously thin. The marketplace is a wall of noise and colour. Merchants shout over each other. Chickens squawk underfoot. One stall sells wigs. Another sells beetles on sticks, don't ask, and everywhere there's the sharp tang of sweat and spice. You make your way through, weaving between donkeys and grandmothers. At the honey stall, a man with a beard like a broomstick tries to upsell you. You haggle. He sighs. You win. Barely. You eavesdrop on two potters arguing whether their cousin's wife is secretly a Syrian spy. You make a mental note. Your mother will love that. At the linen stall, you pause to admire a bolt of dyed cloth the colour of river mud at sunset. It's wildly out of your price range. Still, the seller lets you touch it. It's smooth as lotus petals. You smile and move on. Historians still argue whether ancient Egyptian markets were organised institutions or chaotic free-for-alls, based on the man selling magic beetles that are definitely just bugs he found in his yard. You lean toward chaos. As you pass the perfume booth, a girl offers you a dab on your wrist. It smells like cinnamon and citrus and ambition. You thank her and immediately sneeze. Later, you spot a friend from your weaving group. She waves you over, laughing about a recent misthreaded pattern that made someone's noble funeral shroud look like a donkey. You laugh too, maybe not out of kindness, but still. You return home with your items, your stories, and only a few bruises. Your mother inspects the purchases like a seasoned general. She sniffs the honey. She frowns at the fish. She nods at the flax. Well done, she says. You practically beam. As night falls, you lie on your mat and think about that cloth, the one you couldn't afford. You imagine what you'd make with it. A sash, a shawl, a dramatic curtain to impress guests who never visit. The cat jumps onto your stomach and settles in with a thud. You wheeze. She purrs, and that, apparently, is your reward for surviving another market day without accidentally purchasing a cursed amulet or starting a family feud. Small victories. You wake up to the sound of bees. Not buzzing inside your house, thank the gods, but outside, near the acacia trees that border your courtyard. It's a comforting hum, like nature's version of gossip. You stretch, groaning at the stiffness in your spine, and sit up slowly, trying not to disturb the cat sprawled across your legs like a furred monument. Today's supposed to be restful, a day off, or at least that's what was promised. But no one really gets a day off in ancient Egypt, unless you're a statue of a god or dead. Still, the morning begins peacefully. You help your mother polish household jars with crushed limestone, a strangely satisfying task. The jars gleam afterward, catching the sunlight like miniature obelisks. You pause to admire the reflection of your nose. You decide it's a strong nose, a noble nose. The cat sneezes at it. You reconsider. After chores, you sneak off with your cousin to visit the old herbalist who lives near the canal. She's wrinkled like a sun-dried fig and smells like mint, ash, and danger. People say she talks to snakes. She says people are boring and snakes are better listeners. She shows you a paste made of dates and salt that's supposed to cure anything from sore feet to heartbreak. Your cousin buys a tiny jar. You buy nothing, but she gives you a sprig of dried lavender for dreams. You tuck it behind your ear and pretend not to feel charmed. Historians still argue whether such herbalists were respected healers or mistrusted witches. Judging by how half the village goes to her in secret, it's clearly both. Back home, you mix a bit of the lavender into the oil lamp. The smoke curls sweetly as dusk settles. Your brother sniffs and asks why it smells like rich people. You tell him it's the scent of wisdom. He sticks out his tongue. That evening, a travelling musician stops by your street. He's dusty, missing a sandal, and grinning like someone who knows all your secrets. He plays a melody on a reed flute that makes your skin shiver in the good way. People gather. They always do. There's clapping, stomping, someone banging a jug rhythmically. You join in, not quite dancing, not quite standing still. Then the musician tells a story. It's about a king who fell in love with a river and how he turned into a crocodile to live with her forever. You gasp at the twist ending. Your cousin weeps openly. Your brother falls asleep sitting up. You offer the musician a piece of honey cake, which he accepts with a bow so dramatic it nearly knocks him over. You think he might be your new favourite person. Eventually, the crowd disperses. The stars peek out, shy and slow. You sit by the oil lamp, watching the lavender burn low. The scent clings to your fingers. The cat curls beside your knee and twitches her tail in her sleep. You wonder if she's dreaming of the same story. You whisper. Don't turn into a crocodile, she purrs. Fair enough. There's a buzz around the village today, not from bees this time, but from whispers. A royal tax collector is coming. You hear it first from the baker's wife, who heard it from the priest, who heard it from a goose trader with highly questionable sources. Still, everyone acts like it's confirmed divine prophecy. The kind of news that makes even the dust feel nervous. Your mother starts scrubbing the walls like the inspector is going to taste them. Your brother tries to hide his slingshot behind a statue of Osiris, which only makes it more suspicious. You're handed a broom and told to make everything look wealthier than it actually is. You sweep the yard in precise, desperate spirals. The cat watches you with a look that clearly says, "Why are you like this?" The last time a royal collector came through, half the street swore they were barley merchants, even though they'd never touched a stalk. One man claimed his goat was actually his cousin. Nobody questioned it. Historians still argue whether tax collectors in ancient Egypt were merely scribes or semi-divine terrors with a license to ruin your day. All you know is they're coming, and everyone is pretending their house always smells like jasmine and dignity. By midday, the road shimmers in the heat. Children are dressed in their least ragged tunics. Offerings are quietly arranged near doorways. Someone tries to bribe the gods with a honey cake, which the cat steals before it finishes cooling. Then, finally, he arrives. Not in a golden chariot, but on foot, trailed by two scribes with ink-stained fingers and one man with suspiciously shiny sandals. The collector is lean, sun-dark, and frowning at a tablet that might contain your family's entire life story or a grocery list. He knocks. Your mother steps forward, straightens her shoulders, and bows so gracefully it could win her a statue. She offers water, dates, and the finest seat in the house, which is also the only seat. He says little, asks for your family's name, crops, livestock, and whether anyone in your household sings professionally. You're not sure if it's a joke or a threat. He scribbles something. Then he eats 2 dates, thanks you, and moves on. Everyone exhales. You nearly collapse onto the broom. The cat purrs with the smugness of someone who's never paid a tax in her life. Later, you wander to the riverbank to recover from the adrenaline crash. The water is calm, glittering like melted copper. You sit and toss pebbles in lazy arcs. Each one lands with a plop that sounds like you survived. Across the bank, a boy is practicing how to bow, over and over again. You suspect he's training to become a scribe or an extremely formal goat. Either way, you respect the commitment. As the sun drops, the air softens. You trail your fingers through the shallows. A frog hops onto your sandal and blinks slowly, like it knows secrets. You blink back. Eventually, you return home to a house that still smells faintly of panic and lavender. Your mother's already retelling the tax collector visit like it's a family epic. Your brother insists the collector complimented his slingshot he didn't. You smile. Another strange, dusty chapter added to your personal scroll. And maybe, just maybe, next time he visits, you'll bake your own honey cake and hide it from the cat. The days after the tax collector feel strangely quiet, like the whole village is collectively exhaling. You wake to birds arguing in the fig tree, the sun climbing over the mud brick wall like it's late for something. The air smells of yesterday's fire and today's hope. You stretch, knock over a pot with your foot, and pretend it was your brother. He doesn't buy it. There's no grand task today, no wedding, no market, no royal inspection. Just the steady rhythm of normal. You patch a tunic, sweep the courtyard, and share a crust of barley bread with a cat, who only eats the middle and leaves you the edges. She's generous like that. Mid-morning, you help your uncle seal his new granary. It's a humble affair, clay-lined and freshly painted with protective eyes. He insists you press your palm into the wet plaster for good luck. You do, grinning. Somewhere down the line, a child might find your print and think it belonged to someone important. Historians still argue whether these prints were ceremonial or just convenient. Either way, your hand fits perfectly, and that's enough. Your uncle tells stories while he works about flood years, flying fish, and the time he wrestled a crocodile that turned out to be a log. You laugh harder than you should, but it feels good to laugh without consequence. After lunch beans again, but with salt this time luxury, you wander past the scribe school. Children chant their glyphs in unison, the cadence like river water over stone. You pause to listen, tracing the symbols with your fingers in the dust. You know most of them by sight, but not all. You wonder if you could learn, if you had the time or the permission. A few steps later, you pass a group of young workers repairing a broken canal gate. They wave. You wave back. One of them has hair like wheat and a smile that makes you forget your name for a moment. The cat appears beside you, stares at the workers, and yawns disapprovingly. You decide she's right, it's too early in the day to be flustered. As the afternoon wanes, a light breeze picks up. You climb your favourite lookout spot on a crumbling storage shed and watch the village in miniature chickens pecking, neighbours arguing over a fig branch, children chasing a reed ball like it owes them money. This is your world. Small, cracked, loud, beautiful. You think about what the gods see when they look down. Maybe they see the temples, the tombs, the processions. Maybe they see the way you tuck the corner of your mat just so, or how your mother hums when she stirs lentils. Maybe they see you, now sitting with your arms around your knees, thinking deep thoughts, and also wondering what's for dinner. You hop down, the cat follows, tail high. Together, you head home. Night falls like it always does, slowly, gently, as if it's folding you into a story. The lamps are lit, bread is broken. Your brother is already asleep with his mouth open. You lie on your mat, eyes heavy, stomach full of something warm and decent. The stars wink overhead. You count them until numbers stop mattering. Tomorrow will be the same, and not the same. You don't mind. And now, let your breath soften. The Nile still flows in the darkness, just as it always has. Somewhere out there, reeds rustle gently in the breeze, and frogs sing their sleepy chorus beneath the moon. You imagine the village asleep, doorways quiet, sandals tucked in pairs. Somewhere, a cat dreams of honey cakes. Somewhere, someone hums an old hymn no one remembers writing. You stretch once more, like a cat yourself, and feel the comfort of stillness settle in your bones. The sounds of the day have faded, no scribes tapping, no vendors shouting, no geese plotting revolution, just the hush of night and the whisper of breath. You made it through. You always do. Let your body be still, as the desert becomes still after sunset. Let your thoughts drift, like tiny boats on a wide, lazy river. Let your eyes close, as gently as papyrus folds around a secret. You're safe, you're warm, you're here, and soon you'll be dreaming of gods and fig trees, crocodiles and clever cats, lavender smoke and linen robes. Sleep well, ancient soul. Sleep deeply. Sleep sweetly.